This happened 2 years ago in southern West Virginia, near the edge of the Monongahela National Forest. My name's Ryan, and I was 29 years old at the time. I wanted a quiet weekend, just nature and woods, so I decided to go hunting alone. I've done solo hunts plenty of times before and never had an issue. After driving for about an hour, I parked my truck at the end of the old logging road, hiked in about a mile and a half, and set up my camp near the creek. Nothing fancy, a little fire, small tent, cooked a little dinner, backpack hung up in the trees. The sun went down early that time of year, and the woods got dark very fast. Around 8 or 9 o'clock that night, I heard footsteps outside the campsite, just beyond the tree line. Slow, deliberate. Someone taking 3 or 4 steps and then stopping. It didn't sound like an animal, it didn't sound like a deer. I called out, thinking it might be another hunter cutting through the area, but no answer. Eventually, the sound stopped, and I talked myself into believing it was just an animal. I put out the fire, crawled into my tent, and I tried to sleep. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember was waking up to breathing outside the tent. Not really animal breathing, more like human. Slow, deep breaths moving along the side of the tent, like whoever it was trying to listen for movement inside. My heart was pounding. I reached for my rifle very quietly, but I couldn't feel it at first. I didn't want to tip off whoever was outside, so I kept gently feeling around for it in the dark. My fingers ran along the floor, the sleeping bag, the nylon wall, but nothing. The whole time, the breathing was just right there. My heart was slamming in my ears. I kept inching my hands across the tent floor until finally I felt the cold steel of the barrel. I wrapped my fingers around it and pulled it close. At that point, I decided if I was going to confront this thing, I needed to surprise it. I wasn't some scrawny dude, and I had a loaded rifle. Sitting inside a thin tent made me feel like I was a sitting duck, so I knew I had to do something. And I knew whatever was out there had the advantage if I stayed put. My only chance was speed and light. I grabbed my headlamp. It was a 2500 lumen LED, and if you ever had one of those hit your eyes in the dark, you know it's basically like a flashbang. My plan was simple. Unzip the tent and in one fast sweep, blast the light straight ahead, step out with my rifle up, and scare the hell out of whoever was out there. Blind them, confuse them, gain the upper hand instantly. So I counted down in my head as I crouched down on the tent floor. 3, 2, 1. I yanked the zipper down fast and hit the light too early though. My mistake was turning it on before I stepped outside of the tent. The entire inside of the tent lit up white, and the reflection hit me straight in my face. My eyes had been in the dark for hours, so I was basically blinded. Everything went white for a second, and I stumbled out half blind, but I could still see enough, and what I saw made my stomach drop. About 15 feet away, between 2 pine trees, stood a tall, dark figure. Tall, broad shoulders, not moving. The beam of light hit its face just long enough for me to see the pale skin. It had a hat on with a hood up. Human, definitely human, but the eyes didn't reflect like normal. They just absorbed the light. After it looked like it was studying me for a second, it then stepped backwards into the darkness, and then another step, and then before I could raise the rifle up to get it in between my scope, it vanished. I didn't wait. I packed up as fast as I could, and I headed for my truck. The woods were silent. I didn't hear anything following me, but every few minutes I'd get that weird feeling like eyes on the back of my neck. When I reached the clearing, I saw my truck, and I immediately knew someone had been there. The tailgate was down, my cooler was on the ground, and my extra sleeping bag was unrolled like someone sat on it in the bed. Two muddy footprints on the back tailgate. I got in and I drove until I got service, and then I called my buddy who works for the sheriff's department. He told me they had a few calls about some guy wandering the forest, messing with camps, scaring people off, and even stealing some things. They never caught him. A week later, I went back out with two friends in the daylight. The prints around my tent were clear, bigger than mine by a few sizes, and there were several of them. They circled my tent twice, stopping right where my head would have been. I don't know who it was, maybe the guy the sheriff's department was looking for, or maybe just someone living out there. But that breathing outside my tent didn't sound drunk or curious. It sounded patient, like he was waiting to see what I would do. And that's the part that still sticks with me today. My name is Kara. I was 33 when this happened. It was the second week of November in northwest Montana. I had a day off and decided to hunt alone on a ridge outside Libby. I grew up hunting. I'm careful. I wear my orange. I check in with people. I know what I'm doing. The ridge was one of my favorite places. Big evergreens, quiet saddles, a small drop-off that the deer like to use as a traveling line. I parked around 6 in the morning and hiked up with my pack, planning to sit there until evening. By noon, the temperature had dropped. I moved into an old wooden blind that someone had built years ago. It kept the wind off me and gave me a better angle down the slope. I had a small snack and spent a while glassing the opposite side of the ridge with my binoculars. Nothing unusual, just a normal hunt. Around 3 in the afternoon, the light changed. Clouds pushed in and everything felt dim. I heard something metal from behind me. It was soft, almost like the sound of a buckle or a safety being tapped. At first, I thought it was my own gear settling. Then I heard it again, a tiny metallic snap followed by complete silence. I called out, letting my voice carry, but not yelling. "Hunter here, wearing orange." No answer. I stepped out of the blind and scanned the trees. Nothing moved. No birds flew off. The whole ridge felt still. The kind of still that makes your chest tighten up a bit. I walked a few steps toward the trail and saw footprints in the soft dirt. Fresh, not mine. The heel marks were deeper than the toes, which usually means someone had been standing there for a little while. I pulled out my phone to pin my location and text my husband. Unfortunately, zero service. I tried again, still nothing. Just then, a stick snapped behind me, not far away, close. I turned fast and saw a figure standing about 20 yards to my left. Tall, male, jacket that looked dark green, no orange anywhere. That was the part that hit me first. Anyone hunting in Montana wears orange during rifle season. I raised a hand and called out again, "You good?" The person did not answer. They did not wave. They just stood there, slightly behind a tree, with their head tilted slightly, like they were trying to figure out who I was. A weird fear hit me all at once. Something about the posture, the silence, the lack of movement. Deer watchers move their hands and adjust their stance. This person stayed perfectly still. I picked up my pack and started walking back toward the ridge road. I kept my shoulders loose and my pace steady because I did not want to look scared. The person stepped behind another tree and followed my direction without closing the distance, just mirroring me and my speed. When I reached the service road, my stomach dropped. My truck was not where I'd parked it in the morning. It was literally sitting farther up the road by about 30 yards. At first, I thought I had remembered it wrong, but when I saw the tracks, my tire prints ended in the original spot where I knew I had parked. There was a second set of footprints near the driver's door. The passenger door was cracked open maybe an inch. I walked up slowly with my rifle, low but ready. I nudged the driver's door open with my foot. Inside, my glove box was open. My paper map was unfolded on the seat. Someone had circled the ridge I was hunting and drawn a dot where the blind was. I felt the cold wave of realization. Somebody had gone through my truck while I was out there. I don't even know how they moved it, but it was moved. Somebody also knew exactly where I was sitting. I backed up toward the middle of the road and scanned the tree line. For a second, I saw movement on the ridge. It looked like the same tall figure standing still again, watching me from a distance. I climbed in my truck, locked the doors, and started it. Gravel kicked up behind the tires. The figure stepped further into the trees and disappeared. Later that night, once I was home and settled in, I told my husband what happened. He didn't think I was overreacting. He said the exact thing I had been trying not to say out loud. That wasn't another hunter. That was somebody watching. He called one of our family friends who works in law enforcement and asked if anything similar had been reported in that area recently. A few things had. Not the same details, but enough to make me feel like I had made the right call by leaving when I did. I will never forget that feeling, that sense of being watched, the silent way that person moved, the map on my seat, and how quickly the woods can go from peaceful to dangerous. People always talk about bears or mountain lions when they think of scary moments in the wild. But honestly, the scariest thing I ever saw out there was another person who had absolutely no reason to be watching me the way they were. This story takes place in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, outside the small town of Iron Mountain. Late November 1992. The woods were quiet that morning, snow patches on the ground, temperatures just below freezing. It was the last day of deer season. A woman named Judy lived out there with her husband Bruce. To everyone who knew them, they looked like a normal couple. Judy worked at a local bank. Bruce picked up side jobs. But friends said the marriage had been rocky for a while. Bruce was out of steady work, money was tight, and Judy had started talking about leaving. She'd even mentioned to her sister that she planned to move out after her holiday bonus. That morning, Judy told Bruce she was taking the dogs for a walk behind the property. She didn't put on an orange vest. She wasn't planning to hunt, just stretch her legs for a bit, and most of the hunters in that area had already packed up, being the last day of hunting season. Bruce said that he would just stay behind and hang out in the house and maybe do some chores. Not long after she left, neighbors heard a single gunshot echo through the woods. Within an hour, Bruce called 911 saying his wife had been shot and that it looked like another hunter's stray bullet. He said he found her collapsed near the old logging road with the dogs pacing beside her. Deputies and conservation officers treated it as a hunting accident at first. They've seen it before. Every year or two, someone fires at movement and tragedy follows. Bruce told them that he'd been inside when it happened, heard the shot, and went looking. He seemed upset, answering questions through tears. But the next day, detectives started noticing details that didn't quite fit. The bullet struck Judy square in the chest from less than 30 yards away. Not the kind of angle you'd expect from a random shot through the woods that may have ricocheted. And there were no other hunters assigned anywhere near that area of their property that day. The investigators looked closer. They realized the scene felt staged. The ground around Judy's body showed slight drag marks, as if she'd been moved just slightly. There were no footprints from anyone else, just Bruce. And the casing from the rifle round was found close to their backyard, not deep in the woods. They brought him back in for more questioning. This time, his story shifted. First, he said he heard the shot while inside the house. Then later, he claimed he was in the yard and saw a flash in the distance. Detective asked him why his rifle had been recently fired. Bruce said he'd taken a shot at a squirrel earlier that week, which conveniently no one else heard. A search warrant turned up more surprises. They found Judy's life insurance paperwork inside his desk, a policy for $800,000 taken out just months before her death. He signed it as the sole beneficiary, When they asked him about it, he played dumb, said he didn't remember ever filling it out. Ballistic testing sealed it. The bullet recovered from Judy's body matched Bruce's rifle exactly. Same rifle marks, same chamber signature. There was no mystery shooter. There never had been. Investigators believe Bruce followed Judy into the woods after she left the house. He waited until she turned her back, shot her once in the chest, and then tried to stage it as a random hunting mishap, counting on the fact that it was still open season and gunfire was normal that weekend. When they confronted him with the evidence, the matching bullet, the insurance, the drag marks, he finally cracked. He told them he snapped after another argument about money and divorce. Bruce was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The trial didn't last long. Prosecutors laid out the evidence, and the jury only took a few hours to find him guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The story shook the whole community because for the first few days, everyone believed it was just a tragic accident. One of those unlucky shots you read about every hunting season. But it turns out to be something far worse. People in Iron Mountain still talk about that case whenever hunting season rolls around. They say, you can't always tell what's hiding in the woods, and sometimes it isn't the animals you need to worry about, it's the person walking beside you. This story takes place in northern Arkansas, deep in the Ozark National Forest. The year was 2018. The man's name was Ben Miller. He was 41, married, 2 kids, and had been hunting those same hills since he was a teenager. He knew every ridge, every hollow, every creek crossing. If anyone could navigate that area with their eyes closed, it would be him. It was opening morning of deer season. Ben met his brother Mark at a Forest Service gate around 5:30 a.m. They split up like they always did. Ben headed south along the creek bottom while Mark climbed the ridge to sit above the oak flat. They planned to meet back at camp at mid-afternoon. When Mark got back to camp, around 2 p.m., he noticed something strange right away. The fire pit had been cleared out and restacked. Ben's thermos was sitting on the tailgate, still half full, and his backpack was hanging on a low branch near the tent. Anyone who hunts knows you don't just leave your backpack behind unless you fully expect to come right back. At first, Mark figured Ben had taken a short walk to check out one of his old stands. He waited an hour, then another. As the sun dropped, he tried calling Ben's phone, straight to voicemail. No service out there anyway, but he still had to try. When it started getting dark, Ben grabbed his light and followed the trail Ben normally used. The leaves were thick, but you could still see where someone walked through recently. The tracks led down toward the creek and stopped at a patch of gravel. There was faint marks like someone had slid or stepped, but no footprints leaving that spot. Mark called search and rescue just after 9 p.m. By midnight, there was volunteers, deputies, and a couple game wardens combing the area. They ran dogs along the creek, nothing. They checked the ridgeline, nothing. No sign of injury, no sign of struggle, no sign of Ben. The next morning, the search widened. They found one thing that bothered every single person out there: Ben's orange beanie. It was wedged inside a root pocket under a fallen tree along the creek bank, but the leaves inside it were completely dry, which meant it hadn't been in the water for long or even at all. His brother swore Ben wouldn't take off his blaze orange while walking. Not in that area, not with how thick the brush is. It made no sense for it to be down by the roots like someone had tucked it in there. On day 2 of the search, a volunteer found a piece of torn fabric caught in a cedar about 15 feet off the ground. It was bright orange, same color as Ben's vest, but there was no clear way it could have gotten up that high. No branches below it, no sign of anyone climbing it. It was like it had been placed there or thrown. They found nothing else. No boot tracks, no rifle, no pack, no sign he walked out, no sign he crossed the creek, nothing. By day 4, the official search ended. The sheriff's office said they would continue to follow up on leads, but there really wasn't any. His family kept coming back every weekend for months. They brought experienced trackers. They brought people who knew the terrain better than anyone. Everyone agreed on the same thing. He didn't just get lost. That area slopes in one direction. If you keep walking, you hit a road or a trail or a creek that leads out. For Ben to vanish without leaving a trail meant one of two things. Either he didn't walk out on his own, or someone helped him disappear. To this day, there's no closure, no gear recovered, no remains, no confirmed sighting. Just a man who walked into the woods in broad daylight on opening morning and never came back out. And among the hunters in that park of the Ozarks, there's a saying now: the forest doesn't give you warning. If it wants you, it keeps you. You've been listening to Midnight Confessions. If you have a true story, please leave a comment. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, and we will see you after midnight.